Welcome back to today's Explainer. We've got a massive fire hose of global news to get through today, May 17th, 2026, and our goal is to break down these complex developments so you can genuinely understand what's shifting beneath our feet. To make sense of it all, we're going to use a macro to micro framework. We'll hit flashpoints in global conflict, diplomacy, tech and trade, health and human rights, and then wrap up with elections and record breakers. All right, diving right into Section 1, Flashpoints and Global Conflict. We're mapping out today's kinetic escalations. What's really wild right now is how we're seeing this simultaneous rise in cross-border strikes across three completely distinct parts of the world. First up, Abu Dhabi. A drone actually struck an electrical generator right outside the inner perimeter of the Baraka nuclear power plant. It sparked a massive fire, but, and this is absolutely crucial, the primary intercontainment units are completely secure. Meanwhile, over in Eastern Europe, a wave of Ukrainian drone strikes reached deep into Russian territory. We're talking at least 5 casualties across the Moscow region and Belgorod. And then, looking at the Gaza Strip, the Israeli military just confirmed the targeted assassination of top Hamas commander Izzaddin al-Haddad. Militant factions are already vowing retaliation, which is severely straining an already fragile ceasefire. So, 3 entirely different regions, but the exact same story. The destabilizing impact of these aerial and targeted strikes is immediate, and it is severe. Moving right along to Section 2, Diplomacy, Tech, and Trade. These are the quiet wars over cables, chips, and sovereignty. Let's look at how physical conflict is shifting into diplomatic leverage. Taiwan issued a very firm declaration today, explicitly calling itself a sovereign and independent nation. Now, this is a direct response to comments made by U.S. President Donald Trump following his recent trip to Beijing. He mentioned potentially using U.S. arms sales as leverage in trade negotiations with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Taiwan's statement perfectly captures that incredibly delicate diplomatic tightrope they are walking right now in the Asia-Pacific. We're also watching this fascinating, totally asymmetric standoff between Iran and the United States. On one hand, Iran is applying maritime pressure, but in a very 21st century way. They just announced plans to hit global tech giants, think Google, Amazon, Meta, with heavy infrastructure fees for using the vital subsea fiber optic cables that run right beneath the Strait of Hormuz. They're essentially trying to create a digital choke point. On the flip side, the U.S. response is sticking to a much more traditional playbook, a rigid 5-point ultimatum entirely focused on military blockades and nuclear capabilities. And the core of that U.S. ultimatum? It is incredibly specific. To get any relaxation on those naval blockades, the U.S. is demanding Iran hand over exactly 400 kilograms of enriched uranium, directly to the United States. That is a massive, massive concession to ask for, especially in a diplomatic environment that is deteriorating this quickly. While that standoff continues, other nations are actively securing their own tech futures. Take India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who's been on a major European diplomatic tour. He is weaving state partnerships right into the heart of defense and supply chain security. Up in Sweden, they upgraded bilateral relations to a formal strategic partnership, and Modi even received the Royal Order of the Polar Star. But the real economic heavy hitter here is in the Netherlands. Modi helped coordinate a massive semiconductor deal between India's Tata Group and the Dutch tech giant ASML. You know, this isn't just about getting chips for smartphones. This is a heavy play for defensive tech and securing vital global supply chains. All right, shifting gears to Section 3, Health and Human Rights. We're looking at urgent crises and systematic investigations. First, we have to talk about a very severe health alert. The World Health Organization just officially triggered its highest possible alert level, a public health emergency of international concern. This is for the Bundibugyo Ebola strain that is currently breaking out in the DRC and Uganda. And listen, the severity of this really cannot be overstated. Health officials are specifically flagging elevated risks because of the intense population movement in that region, plus a very high initial sample positivity rate. To make matters worse, there are currently 0 approved vaccines or specific therapeutics for this particular strain. It is a highly urgent situation. Over in Afghanistan, Taliban Supreme Leader Hibatullah Akhundzada has approved a new 31-article decree known as the Principles of Separation Between Spouses. A key part of this law codifies a new standard, stating that the, quote, silence of a virgin girl, unquote, officially counts as legal consent for marriage. This decree is obviously a massive shift in marital consent laws for the region, and it's being reported globally as a highly controversial development. We also need to look at 2 massive, highly sensitive investigations unfolding across France right now.
First, authorities have launched a huge probe into allegations of systematic physical and sexual abuse by child supervisors. This was triggered by a flood of parent complaints, and this investigation now spans an astonishing 84 kindergartens and 20 primary schools just in Paris. On top of that, French human trafficking investigators are expanding their probe into the Epstein case. Thanks to the U.S. Justice Department releasing unredacted files earlier this year, 10 new suspected victims have stepped forward. It significantly broadens the European scope of this investigation.
Let's move to our final section, Section 4, Elections and Record Breakers, Political Dead Heats and Historic Human Achievements. Let's check in on the global political arena, starting with Brazil, where the upcoming presidential race is in an absolute dead heat. I mean, fresh polling data shows an exact tie between the incumbent leftist President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and his right-wing challenger Flávio Bolsonaro. What's really interesting here is that these tightly contested numbers are holding totally steady, even as Bolsonaro is facing intense news scrutiny over a domestic film funding scandal. It is quite literally anyone's race right now. Now, stepping away from the heavier news, let's look at some truly incredible human triumphs. Over on Mount Everest, 2 Nepali Sherpas are absolutely smashing historic records. The legendary Kami Rita Sherpa just broke his own world record, successfully summiting the world's highest peak for a mind-boggling 32nd time. 32 times. And at the exact same time, Lakpa Sherpa reached the peak for her 11th time, officially extending her own record for the most successful summits by a woman. Talk about an awe-inspiring display of human endurance. And we're wrapping up today with a phenomenal piece of history in international sports. 18-year-old Egyptian prodigy Amina Orfi just defeated her compatriot Noor El Sherbini in an absolutely grueling 5-game thriller over in Giza. With this victory, Orfi becomes the youngest female player ever to capture the PSA Squash World Championship title. Just an incredibly inspiring high note to finish our digest on. Wow. Okay, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. From the digital blockades of subsea cables and new defensive tech alliances to shifting global health emergencies, right up to the literal summit of Mount Everest. Power, diplomacy, and human limits are being aggressively tested on all fronts. So, I want to leave you with this question. Looking at this vast array of global shifts we've explored today, which of these developments do you think will most directly impact your tomorrow? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.